Teaching hearing infants sign language, help or hinder language acquisition. Hello, my name is Shelby Gillespie, and the purpose of this paper is to discuss whether teaching hearing infants sign language helps or hinders the language acquisition process. We will go through why, after research and reflecting on my own personal experiences, this led me to believe that teaching sign language to hearing infants helps the language acquisition process. We will talk about how children who learn sign language as an infant will communicate sooner, perform higher than peers, and enhance cognitive development. So, does teaching hearing infants sign language help or hinder the language acquisition process? After I pondered this question, I chose to look through the lens of Albert Bandura, through the social learning theory. Bandura believes that most human behavior is learned observationally, through modeling. From observing others, one forms an idea of how new behaviors are performed, and on later occasions, this coded information serves as a guide for action. Bandura, 1971. When someone learns sign language, they learn by observing others and then copying the person signing. After more research and reflecting on my own personal experiences, I found that teaching infants sign language helps the language acquisition process. American Sign Language, ASL, has a positive effect on the acquisition of English by hearing children. Caprisi, Catini, Brazzini, and Volterra, 1998. I also found that symbolic gesturing fosters rather than hinders the development of language comprehension skills, especially during the second year. Goodwin, Arcadolo, and Brown, 2000. I've come to this conclusion because if an infant learns sign language, they will begin communicating a lot sooner than a child who has not learned sign language. Additionally, infants who learn sign language seem to perform higher than peers who did not learn sign language. And lastly, teaching sign language to hearing children can help achieve cognitive enhancement. An infant who learns sign language will begin communicating a lot sooner than a child who has not learned sign language. Infants from around 6 months of age can begin to learn basic signs. Collingwood, 2016. I, myself, know this firsthand because I was an infant who learned sign language, and I was communicating way earlier than the other babies around me. My older brother is deaf and has been since he was born. He is 2.5 years older than I am. So when I was born, I was immersed into both sign language and verbal communication. Due to the fact that both of my parents are hearing, they would speak around me, while also signing to my brother. So looking at this from the social learning theory, it would make sense as to why I did what I did next. Before I was even capable of communicating verbally, I had already began to sign. Sign language was actually my first language. I believe as a baby I saw everyone else around me signing, and in order to communicate, I copied their actions and began to communicate using sign language as well. By the time I was 1 year old, I was able to communicate quite more than your typical hearing child. I could sign and speak more than any other child my age. By the experience I've had, learning sign language as an infant truly does get a child to start communicating sooner. And even though I knew this from personal experience, I was interested to see what the experiments would say about the topic at hand. In the experiment done in 2000, it is said that symbolic gesturing experiences seem to jumpstart verbal development. In another study, it says that motor control of the hands mature before comparable motor control of the voice in young children. Bonvillian, Orlansky, and Novak, 1983. So just these two statements alone suggest that signing can be a jumpstart to verbal development, and that we experience the motor control of hands before the motor control of our voice. This makes sense as to why sign language was my first language. It was easier to do since motor control in my hands were more developed than my verbal motor skills. It also shows in a study that As a way to communicate, infants often turn to symbolic gestures. Cross-sectional and longitudinal studies, Arcodolo and Goodwin, 1998, have shown that infants between 10 and 20 months are so highly motivated to communicate that they often spontaneously recruit such symbolic gestures as a way around the obstacle posed by the articulatory demands of verbal words. Arcodolo and Goodwin, 2000. This would further explain as to why I started to communicate with my family by signing before speaking. Internally, I knew that I could not say something to get what I want. But as a way of getting what I want, I could communicate by signing my desire, want, and or need. This further pushed me to learn sign language in order to get what I need. There was a study done in 1983 where they studied a group of infants who were learning sign, and their findings were so interesting. The sign language and motor development of 11 young children of deaf parents were studied across a 16-month period. The subjects showed accelerated early language development producing, on average, their first recognizable signs at 8.5 months, their 10th sign at 13.2 months, and their first sign combination at 17 months. In contrast, children learning to speak typically do not attain the equivalent spoken language milestones until 2 to 3 months later. Bonvillian, Orlansky, and Novak, 1983. In this study, it shows that these infants are communicating 2 to 3 months sooner than the children who are learning to speak typically. In the same experiment, they found that the children learning sign language would typically acquire a sign language vocabulary quicker than a verbal vocabulary, and the children reached language milestones several months in advance. Another interesting fact found in this study is that children who learn sign typically begin to combine signs before children verbally start to combine words. The mean age at which subjects first combined signs was 17 months. Children learning to speak typically join two words together at around 18 to 21 months of age. Bonvillian, Orlansky, and Novak, 1983. Additionally, infants who learn sign language seem to perform higher than peers who did not learn sign language. Teaching sign language to infants is setting them up for success in the future. This was proved in a study done by Arcodolo and Goodwin in 2000, when they stated that the results indicated that the ST sign training children were indeed continuing to outperform the control children even 6 years after the original intervention. Even 6 years after the original experiment, these children were doing better than peers in school. Children who learn sign are thought to gain benefits such as psychological benefits, including improved confidence and self-esteem. And since they are able to communicate, they experience less feelings of anger due to lack of communication. Another benefit is that if a child is upset and cannot speak clearly, they can use sign. Collingwood, 2016. All of these psychological benefits could lead to a child doing better in school. A child who feels confident and has high self-esteem will do better in school than those who have low self-esteem and low confidence. So sign language can help behavior, and good behavior helps children succeed in school. In a study done by Caprisi, Catini, Rosini, and Volterra in 1998, it was shown that hearing children who learn sign language as a second language in the early school years improved more rapidly on tests of visual spatial cognition and spatial memory than their schoolmates not attending the sign language course. In a different document, it is even said that sign language gives a head start in language learning and can lead to a higher achievement in measures of intelligence, academic, and social development. Freeman King, 2017. Even as infants, children learning sign were mastering language earlier than children who were not learning sign. Children were able to sign 10 signs at just 1 year of age. When children were just 18 months old, they could sign 48.7 signs. Children's spoken language at 18 months normally only have a vocabulary of 3 to 50 words, most falling in the lower part of the spectrum. Bonvillian, Orlansky, and Novak, 1983. Communication is so important for all humans. Exposure to sign may therefore not boost all aspects of language acquisition, but may enhance representational gesture use, which is likely to have an important role in communicative function. Daugherty, Sneeden, 2008. In order for children to succeed in school and eventually in the world, they will need to know how to effectively communicate. Signing could help with this at an earlier age. Research shows that children with strong language skills, regardless of the language, consistently outperform their peers on tests of intelligence and other measures of success. The key is language accessibility of a deep and meaningful nature. Freeman King, 2017. In order to truly interact with others, it is necessary to have linguistic competency, and sign language could be a value avenue for hearing children to learn and utilize language. Freeman King, 2017. When a child is getting all of these valuable language skills at an early age, they will most likely perform higher than their peers because of this extra communicational skills they have learned from sign language. Lastly, teaching sign language to hearing children can help achieve cognitive enhancement. As a study stated in 1998, exposure and participation in sign language programs enhances nonverbal cognitive development. Caprisi, Catini, Rosini, and Volterra, 1998. It then goes on to say that experience with sign language enhances nonverbal cognitive skills such as visual and perceptual discrimination and recognition of spatial relations. Just like with learning any other language, you gain cognitive enhancement. Some people may not know, but ASL, American Sign Language, is considered a full language. Bonvillian, Orlansky, and Novak, 1983. With that being said, we can and will gain these cognitive benefits by learning sign language, especially if we learn sign language as infants. It is even said that preschoolers who learn sign language showed a greater understanding of the English vocabulary. Caprisi, Catini, Rosini, and Volterra, 1998. In one study, it is said that once the subject's children begin to sign for the first time, most of them made uninterrupted progress. Their learning of signs gradually increased throughout the whole study. Bonvillian, Orlansky, and Novak, 1983. Learning sign stimulated expressive language development, and there is a positive effect of the symbolic gesturing experience on learning how to talk. Goodwin, Arcadolo, and Brown, 2000. Studies show that the ability to sign basic words could prove helpful in boosting communication and providing a bridge to the spoken word. It may also facilitate the acquisition of verbal and written forms of communication later on. Collingwood, 2016. Children learning sign could be a huge positive effect on spoken language and future communication. All of this leading to an enhanced cognitive. The younger we learn, the more we gain. Early language learning experiences affect other areas of development that are critical to children's future success. Lack of language access can negatively impact psychological and social development. Freeman King, 2017. There are many benefits to learning sign language. Some of the positive benefits is that signing boosts the infant's vocabulary and mental development, reduces tantrums, and improves parent-child relationships. Collingwood, 2016. Research shows that it would be extremely useful to offer sign language as a second language to hearing children for linguistic as well as cognitive reasons. Caprisi, Catini, Rosini, and Volterra, 1998. Learning sign language may also be an important factor in enhancement of visual spatial cognition. Caprisi, Catini, Rosini, and Volterra, 1998. Overall, sign language could be beneficial in a child's life. In a paper written in 2008, a researcher states, from a researcher's perspective, baby sign provides a fantastic window into the ontogenetic as well as evolutionary development of language. Daugherty, Sneeden, 2008. Sign language provides many things, but one of the most important things it provides is that it is the only accessible venue for natural and complete language acquisition in early years. So sign language could be a key in early language and cognitive enhancement. So in conclusion, sign language helps the language acquisition process by providing a way for infants to communicate sooner, by effectively helping children perform higher than peers, and lastly, by improving cognitive enhancement. So why not teach infants sign language, especially if they will start communicating sooner, performing higher than peers, and they'll have a higher cognitive? Well, all three of these combined, it proves that not only does sign language help the language acquisition process, but it is also very beneficial in language learning. So the overall goals in the literature below was to test whether sign language is helpful and what effects it has on language. In Arcodolo and Goodwin 2000, their goal was to see how symbolic gesturing during infancy will impact IQ at 8 years of age. Research showed that the children who learned sign as toddlers were at a 12-point advantage over the children who were in a non-intervention control group. Sign language also provides cognitive enhancement, and in Caprisi, Catini, Rosini, and Volterra in 1998, they were trying to determine if teaching sign language to hearing children can be a possible factor in cognitive enhancement. Research shows that in both studies that the sign group performed better than the other groups. In Bandera 1971, Bandera discusses what social learning theory is. This helps form the framework of this paper. Bandera's social learning theory stands true to sign language. The primary way to learn sign language is to observe and then copy. Sign language is beneficial in many ways, and in Bonvillian, Orlansky, and Novak in 1983, they were testing the sign language and motor development of 11 young children who had deaf parents. They figured out that these children showed accelerated language development. And in Collingwood 2016, Collingwood discussed how teaching sign language to your baby can benefit both you and the child, and that the ability to sign basic words could prove helpful in boosting communication and could provide a bridge to spoken word. In Daugherty Sneeden 2008, Daugherty Sneeden talks about why signing may be important. There is strong research for the baby signing benefits. There is related evidence from deaf sign and language research. There are compelling support from families who have used this approach. So sign language helps with communication skills. In Freeman King 2017, Freeman's main points are about how early language learning experiences affect other areas of development, and that sign language is a critical first step to communication in gesturing on early language development. They found that symbolic gesturing does not hamper verbal development, but may even facilitate it. And this is where I found all of my research and information for this paper. These are the references. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you learned a lot.